That was also on the previous Falcon Heavy flight, and that is part of the mission extension kit that SpaceX uses for missions that are basically longer than usual. In this case, this mission is gonna be basically the second stage is gonna be coasting to geostationary altitude, which is approximately 36,000 kilometers. I don't know about miles, but you can use Google for that. And it's gonna be a long coast. It's gonna be 6 hours between burns, and so this second stage needs to be able to have the RP1, the kerosene on the second stage needs to stay liquid for the whole thing, and so that gray band actually helps with the temperature of the RP1 as the second stage coasts to apogee. Now, it is also important not just for it to not freeze, but also to not be at very cold temperatures. Even though it might be liquid, if it's too cold, it may become very viscous, for example, and that you don't want that to have to basically alter how your engine works, because it goes into the engine, it does all this stuff that it does to do, and then it's fire up and everything. So you need the kerosene to be in a basically in a temperature that is manageable, that you know it's gonna work, and that you already have experience with, and that gray band sort of helps in that way, not just basically avoiding freezing of the RP1, but also controlling the temperature to a more manageable one and a more knowable one, I guess is the expression.
Sure. So we've seen this before. I mean, it's not just been on Falcon Heavy missions either. I think they saw it debut on a GPS mission, right? Which has a long coast phase when it goes to medium Earth orbit.
Yeah, it appears that they eventually figured out that they didn't need that for
GPS.
those, though, yeah. For GPS missions, but for these ones, they go all the way out there, 6 hours of coasting. That definitely seems like it is useful for that.
Yeah. So, another good question that I'm seeing in chat: do we have a time for the static fire? And well, we don't have the exact time. SpaceX does not announce it or anything. We can always base it based on when we saw vapors and things. And Alex, you were estimating somewhere around 12:45 Eastern time, which would be
and
25 minutes from now, just a little bit over.
And we can actually use another timer, so to speak, which is the T-minus 22-minute vent for Falcon
that's true.
Heavy. Which should happen in about 3 minutes from now, if it is actually 12:45. So if the T0 for this static fire is 12:45 p.m., then it should be in about 3 minutes from now.
Yeah,
so
we were talking earlier.
In 3 minutes, we know it's 45.
We were talking earlier, we were trying to speculate when they might do it, and sometimes they aim for the same T0 as the actual launch. We're like, oh, maybe it won't be till this evening, but obviously that's not correct, so who knows? But that vent will give us a pretty good indicator one way or the other.
Yeah, it's basically, I saw basically 12:03 more or less, so I thought, well, maybe they started loading liquid oxygen at 12 p.m. and then, like a couple of minutes later, you start seeing some vapors already in the tanks. So it was like, well, liquid oxygen load on the first stage on the boosters, that happens around T-minus 45 minutes. So 12 p.m., 45 minutes later, that should be the T0. That's sort of the idea here, but we'll see if it happens.
All right. A lot of questions we're getting in chat here. Here's a good one. Does Falcon Heavy use a well-seasoned booster as the expendable center stage? Chris, don't think they can do that, right?
That's the interesting thing about Falcon Heavy is it's still very complex vehicle. I'm trying to think what tweet it was. Oh, it was I RT'd the HIF shot of the SpaceX photograph of Falcon Heavy with the 27 engines in shot. And I retweeted it saying something like, 27 engines to improve your Saturday. And Elon replied to that one rather than the SpaceX one, which probably annoyed a few people. But it actually said, he emphasized how complex it still is, that all these engines work at the same time. So you're talking about the core stage. You have immense loading on that core stage. And I think that was one of the fears on the maiden flight. He had two fears. One was clearing the pad and getting through max Q, and then also with the SRB, with the boost separation. Those were the real key items we were watching for, which were potential failure points. So yeah, the core stage is extremely important in that respect because it's taking all that load.
Right. And so yeah, you can't convert one of those old Falcon 9 boosters to be Falcon Heavy. So the Center Core, and this will be its one and only flight as well, because of all that energy that the core ends up taking and ends up putting into the vehicle. Pretty hard to recover those. And they've tried it. They tried it on the first 3 flights. One landing was successful, although they also lost that one out at sea. So they actually have never recovered a Falcon Heavy Center Core, and we're not sure when or if they will ever attempt again, because a lot of these missions simply, the requirements don't really allow for center core recovery. But they are planning to recover these side boosters like they have on all the previous Falcon Heavy flights, a dual return to launch site, which is interesting because just late last night, Falcon 9 launched from Pad 40, launching a OneWeb mission, 40 satellites on board, successful Falcon 9 launch. That ended with the first stage landing on landing zone 1, and they'll have to get that stage obviously off of that landing pad because both LZ-1 and 2 will be needed for the Falcon Heavy mission, so another dual RTLS. And on that front, Alex, the 2 side boosters are seasoned boosters,
Look at
least
that.
partially.
There goes the T-minus 22-minute vent.
Hey, there we go. Fantastic. So yeah, so right about 12:45, I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I was quietly looking at at the rocket, seeing if the vent appeared.
There we go.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah,
The last
the
question?
two, so Center Core is not well seasoned, but the side boosters they've flown before, yeah.
Yeah, they flown on the previous Falcon Heavy flight on the USSF-44. They landed back on LC-1 and LC-2, and they will be doing the same later this week. It's actually this mission is pretty much like a carbon copy of the previous mission for Falcon Heavy. It's not really that different in that sense. It's gonna be going to GEO. The second stage has the gray paint as well and everything. The side boosters will land back on land. The center core will be expanded. I will have to check if even the recovery vessel for the fairing halves is the same.
Hey,
Maybe not, but we'll see.
that's gonna be like a trivia question in a couple years. What was the mission that used this fairing recovery vessel, expended a Center Core out of these things? And people are like, well, there are two there are two answers. Do we know what? I don't have the numbers in front of me. What's the booster numbers for the 2 side boosters? Or if we even know the Center Core booster number.
64 and 65, and the center core is 70.
All right, 64, 65, flying for the second time each, and then 70 in the center, making its one and only flight. Thank you, Alex.
And I'm gonna be waiting for you to actually take pictures of the boosters once you go out for mode setup.
Yeah.
That's already a homework for you, but maybe they are in the same configuration as the last launch, in which case the booster closer to the tower, that should be B1064, and the other one, the one looking more to the Starship Tower, that should be 65. Wow,
Okay,
obviously
is that the same as last time?
70. Well, if it is the same,
Right.
then it should be that way. But you're gonna be figuring out when
Yeah,
you
we'll
go to
find out.
remotes.
Last time we went up for remotes and they were literally rolling out the rocket while we were there, so we barely figured that out, but we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, those who in chat may be noticing there's no payload fairing on top of this rocket right now. That's because they're doing the static fire before they integrate the payload. So after today's test, assuming it all goes well, they'll roll it back horizontal, put it back in the hangar, and then they'll integrate the payload fairing later. And then they'll roll back out for launch. So we'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, you'll have 24/7 views of that here on Space Coast Live. Got another question here, Chris. This could make for some visually spectacular views because this launch time, we have a window. It's a classified mission, so we might not know the exact T0 yet, but we know approximately it's aiming for the evening, a little bit before sunset. Any chance of some jellyfish action on this launch?
Oh, I hope so. I think that's a Chris G question because he's the one who looks out for the jellyfishes and emphasizes how much he enjoys them on a live stream because we always hear him explaining how much he loves them. Yeah, I think there's a very good chance. Again, we are a bit in the dark as far as this mission for obvious reasons. But I want to just go on a tangent, as I usually do, and just praise the fact that they're reusing these boosters left, right, and center now. I still remember Elon at the National Space Club talking about reusability for the first time. And I remember getting that email from I'm going to say a Lockheed Martin guy saying they may achieve it, but they'll be launching nothing because of the payload penalties of bringing these boosters back with the propeller lead on it. And he said, look, they might make it work, but it'd be a gimmick because they just won't have the upmass capability. And they've proven that wrong. But also, he's proven himself wrong in a way because he said at the time, and I'm sure this was a very valid point to make, they would expect to lose several boosters. And especially on drone ship landings because they're more challenging than bringing them back to LZ1, LZ2. And they're having so many successes now. Alex, how many successes in a row have they had now? I've lost count.
Oh, jeez.
Well, hold on. I don't have any.
I have a spreadsheet for this. Hold on.
Put you on the spot there.
Successful landings in a row?
Yeah.
Successful landings in a row was 88 yesterday.
Yeah, last night was 88.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible because I'm sure in their best wishes, they expected to have some consideration for losing 1 or 2 or 3 a year. Just from natural loss because of the variables involved and how difficult it is. But I just want to mention that because I think it's an incredible achievement. And it also plays in to, not to digress too much, into Starship because all that technology they're learning, there's people involved with Falcon 9 landings that are now involved with Starship. So they'll take that knowledge base and that experience and that confidence with them. And that should help them in good stead going forward.
I mean, I was already going to digress into Starship, but you're right. Like, well, one of the things... That's precisely why I like that statistic when I usually point out on Twitter or somewhere else, this is like the 80-something consecutive landing in a row. Because the amount of landings in a row right now, it's approaching sort of the same reliability of launching some of the most reliable rockets in the world, right? Like Atlas V, I think it's at 96 launches. So, if you're already landing with the same reliability of some of the most reliable launch rockets in the world, that gives you an idea of, would you ride on an Atlas V, for example? It's a very reliable rocket, right? Would you ride on a Falcon 9 booster? I mean, it's the same reliability. But now, you go into the whole thing, to the whole deal of, Falcon 9 doesn't have any it doesn't have any sort of redundancies into the landing profile and everything, but the Starship will. So that's a whole rabbit hole that one could go into, and I really like that stat because of that. Because it's eventually Starship might be as reliable or even way better than any of these statistics that we're pointing out for Falcon 9.
Yeah. Also, shout out to whoever just ordered their NSF calendar. It shows up on the screen now. So big thank you to everyone who sends support for the streams. I also see a Jasper with a PadRat membership saying that we need jellyfish merch. I have to get on that. We'll have to talk to the store team and see what the plan there is. But jellyfish merch, heard. Got a good question here from Lorenzo. Are Falcon family rockets, including Stage 2, filled completely or only partially for static fires? I believe it's also doubles as a
wet dress rehearsal, yeah.
Yeah, like a wet dress rehearsal. So they do, in fact, fuel the entire thing full of kerosene and oxygen on all stages. I don't think it's I don't know, maybe Alex will correct me. I don't know if it's a requirement for weight purposes or if it's just because it doubles as a wet dress rehearsal.
Well, it might be both. It might be I mean, especially for Falcon Heavy, with 27 engines, 27 Merlin engines, the clamps on the launch pads, I don't think they are rated for, for underfueling the rocket and
Sure.
Firing all engines at the same time. Maybe McGregor can. They have the load cap that they use and the tie cables and things like that. But here at the launch pads, that is not the case. So one thing might be that the weight purposes, but also testing, just as a fueling countdown will do.
Yeah, it's also a countdown rehearsal. That's a very good point. Obviously, they stop short of ignition, or they don't stop short. They stop short of releasing the rocket from the hold down points. But definitely a countdown rehearsal in there as well. So lots of benefits from doing a full propellant loading procedure. Chris Watt's got a question. How many more Falcon Heavy launches are planned for this year? So this is the first of the year, quickly following USSF-44 late last year. What else do we have on the manifest this year, Alex?
Well, up next, I think it might be the Viasat 3, the America's launch. Currently looking like March of this year, but Viasat has had a little bit of delay here and there, especially due to Boeing. There's a whole soap opera history there of them, and then in the springtime we shall see another 2 Falcon Heavy launches, which are the USSF-52 mission, which will be reusing the side boosters from this one if they land successfully, which I believe they will, and then the EchoStar 24 satellite, which it's actually going to be the heaviest satellite going into geostationary transfer orbit. So that's going to be a huge satellite going on a huge rocket. And then towards the end of the year, on October, there's the Psyche mission, NASA's Psyche mission, that will be going to a metallic asteroid in the belt. So there you go.
Awesome. So we're looking at then maybe 4 or 5 on the year?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Including this one, yeah.
Let's cross our fingers.
Well, yeah, obviously it all depends on payload readiness and other delays and things like that, but there we go.
That's actually a good thing as well, because this is an extra Falcon Heavy experience. Remember, it's not launched that many times, let's face it, compared to Falcon 9 for a start. But it's got some massive flagship missions coming up, not least with the Artemis program on the Lunar Hub, and we're going to have also the Gateway, I should say, but also Europa Clipper as well. That's in the bag coming up, and that's something they won off SLS. SLS Cargo was going to launch Europa Clipper, I think, at one point. But it's going to be infinitely cheaper launching it on Falcon Heavy. So again, these are future missions where this vehicle has got a future for many years to come, despite what's happening with Starship.
And on that front, because obviously a lot of these missions we talked about have the requirement of you got to expend that center core to really take advantage of Falcon Heavy's capabilities. If you do a fully recoverable Falcon Heavy, it's only marginally more mass orbit than a Falcon 9 would be. So when you're picking your launch vehicle, the odds of it falling in the range of fully recoverable Falcon Heavy, but not being able to be serviced by Falcon 9 is pretty slim, which is why most of these missions end up expending it. Is that true of a lot of these missions coming forward? I mean, Alex, do we know of any missions that yes, they actually will be able to recover the center core? I know there's a lot that we don't exactly know the recovery profile. Are there any we know they will at least attempt a center core recovery again?
Yeah, so we obviously don't fully know until closer to the launch. For example, for this launch in particular, we didn't know about the profile of the landing of the side boosters and things like that until we got a look at the things like FCC communications,
like the
license
launch
and things like that.
license, yeah.
Exactly. So, but we can have sort of an idea just knowing more or less the capabilities of Falcon Heavy and comparing between missions. For example, Viasat 3 Americas, it's going to be also going to GEO, just like this mission, and just like USSF 44, but we believe it's going to be even heavier than these two. So it's more likely that the side boosters for that mission will land on drone ships, for example. So that's one of the indications that it might be that way, might be another way. For Psyche, for example, we actually knew for the 2022 attempt, they were trying to have the side boosters landing back on land and the center core will be expanded. But because it changed windows, maybe Delta V requirements are higher or something like that. Those things can change for a mission like that. And then there are missions where we actually don't know anything at all, like not the orbit, not the payload mass or anything like that, like USSF-52. It's a complete mystery. We're not sure where it's going, what the payload is. So it's up to people to just guess where the boosters will go, but it doesn't seem like in the near term we'll see any of the center cores being recovered, at least.
So, Chris B, my question relating to this is if we're not seeing these center cores really get recovered with any frequency, if at all, going forward, I mean, is that some sort of, I don't want to call it a failure. Obviously, Falcon Heavy has a huge payload manifesto. People keep buying Falcon Heavy launches, so clearly it's viable and a useful rocket. It's just curious that the rocket was intentionally designed for recovering all 3 boosters, but they're not really utilizing that full capability. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think maybe they're comparing the business case compared to the competition. So let's look at a Delta 4 Heavy, for example. That was 3 cores that never recovered any of the cores. They're recovering.
И всем привет! С вами снова Spacex, и вы снова попали на мою прямую трансляцию. В общем-то, да. И сейчас у нас через всего лишь 7 минут 50 секунд, 55 секунд, ну где-то так примерно, это примерное время, потому что точное время никто не знает досекундно, ну то есть, не, ну точно известно то, что в 17:45 по UTC это будет, но именно до секунд, точно неизвестно, так что, может быть, будет, ну максимум через минуту после того, как закончится таймер. Это произойдет, а произойдет прожиг Falcon Heavy, вот этой, которая стоит сейчас на стартовой площадке USSF-69 в космическом центре Кеннеди во Флориде. Сейчас идет заправка центрального блока, ну и боковых ускорителей. В общем-то будет огневой тест всех 27 двигателей Marine 1D, которые установлены на центральном блоке и боковых ускорителях этой ракеты. В общем-то, что это за ракета такая? Falcon Heavy. Сейчас, подождите. Ну, во-первых, это прожиг для миссии USSF-67, запуск который планируется 13 января в 22:51 по UTC. В общем-то, да, с этой же площадки USSF-69 в космическом центре Кеннеди во Флориде. Запускаться будут секретные спутники для космических сил. Нет, подождите. Сейчас. Для космических сил США. В общем-то, да, про полезную нагрузку практически ничего не известно. Все засекречено, в общем-то. Я обязательно буду проводить прямую трансляцию, она уже запланирована, начну еще за 1,5 часа до запуска. Запустим ее также в КСП. Ну, возможно. В общем-то, да, посадка будет в этом запуске лишь у боковых ускорителей. Центральный блок приземляться не будет, потому что запуск вроде бы сразу на геостационарную орбиту. И да, и в общем-то, центральный блок придется выкинуть. А боковые ускорители вернутся на посадочные площадки LZ1 и LZ2. В общем-то, то же самое, как и в предыдущем запуске Falcon Heavy USSF-44, который был 1 ноября 2022 года. Напоминаю то, что перед тем предыдущим запуском последний пуск Falcon Heavy был еще летом 2019 года. Поэтому да, наконец-то Falcon Heavy начинает снова часто летать. Кстати, 2,5 месяца это минимальный вроде промежуток времени, который будет между запусками. А после этого ближайший запуск Falcon Heavy может состояться уже в марте. Да. Сейчас, подождите, я посмотрю. Не посмотрю. Не, могу посмотреть вот так вот. Если я сделаю. Да блин, что за фиговина происходит? Ага. Ну да. Блин. Ясно. В общем-то, следующий пуск Falcon Heavy может быть уже в марте. Да блин. Чё не грузится нифига? В марте может быть сейчас. Так, ракета Falcon. Да блин. Вот, может быть запуск спутников Viasat-3. Да. Мне кажется, его перенесут, потому что его уже кучу раз переносят. Мне кажется, почему-то, что его еще перенесут. Ну, в общем-то, да. Как видите, вторая ступень внизу немножечко покрашена так в серый, так же, как и при запуске USSF-44, потому что вторую ступень нужно будет произвести еще одно зажигание двигателей еще через несколько часов после старта. И это сделано для того, чтобы топливо выкипало не так сильно. да, то топливо будет просто нагреваться, но и просто будет выкипать. Поэтому вот, если покрасить, видимо, ступень в серый, то топливо будет выкипать не так сильно. Ну, в общем-то, Falcon Heavy это двухступенчатая ракета сверхтяжелого и тяжелого класса, разработанная компанией Spacex, разрабатывающая компания Spacex еще с 2010 года, не с 2011 года. Изначально первый запуск был запланирован еще на 2013 год, и причем с Вандерберга, но в итоге первый запуск был произведен аж 6 февраля 2018 года с этой же площадки LC-39А. Все запуски Falcon Heavy могут проводить только с этой площадки LC-39А в космическом центре Кеннеди во Флориде. В общем, да, первый запуск это был тестовый. Тесла Ростер запускали в сторону Марса, она там где-то до сих пор эта машина и летает, и вторая ступень тоже. Боковые ускорители удачно приземлились на площадке LC-1 и LC-2. А вот центральный блок неудачно приземлился на плывущую платформу в космосе Лаврию из-за того, что вместо 3 двигателей запустился всего лишь 1 двигатель. Ну и ступень грохнулась об воду на большой скорости. В общем-то, да. Второй запуск, который у нас был 11 апреля 2019 года. Это был запуск Арабсат 6А. Спутники Арабсат. Все 3 ускорителя удачно приземлились. Боковые на LZ-1 и LZ-2, а центральный блок на плавучую платформу. И третий запуск был 25 июня 2019 года с миссией STP-2 на низкую околоземную солнечную синхронную орбиту. Там куча различных спутников было. Боковые ускорители удачно приземлились на посадочной площадке LZ-1 и LZ-2, а вот посадка центрального блока не удалась. Ну и вот последний это был у нас 1 ноября 2022 года, USSF-67 на геостационарную орбиту, засекреченные спутники USSF. В общем-то, да, боковые ускорители приземлились удачно, а центральный блок, посадка на центрального блока не проводилась. Ну, в общем-то, Falcon Heavy, да, это у нас двухступенчатая ракета с грузоподъемностью. Кстати, до пуска СЛС 16 ноября эта ракета была самой грузоподъемной ракетой, которая эксплуатировалась на данный момент, и самой мощной также. Ну, в общем-то, да, но сейчас самая мощная и самая грузоподъемная это СЛС. Но учитывая то, что следующий пуск СЛС будет в 24-м, а то и в 25-м году, можно сказать то, что Falcon Heavy, в принципе, самая мощная ракета, потому что она еще более-менее часто уже будет летать, наверное. Ну, потому что на низкую околоземную орбиту эта ракета может поднять 64 тонны в одноразовом варианте и около 30 тонн в полностью многоразовом. На ее переходную орбиту 27 тонн в одноразовом и около 8 тонн в полностью многоразовом. Кстати, это еще для старой версии блок 4, сейчас, мне кажется, там на пару тонн больше будет. В сторону Марса может отправить 17 тонн в одноразовом варианте, в многоразовом не знаю сколько, и на Плутон в одноразовом варианте в сторону Плутона целых 3,5 тонны. Ну, в общем-то, да, всего было 4 пуска, все 4 удачные. Кстати, стартовая масса у этой ракеты аж 1420 тонн. Ее высота составит 70 метров. О!
And that looks like a nominal burn and shutdown. A lot of smoke, a lot of steam. Falcon Heavy completing a static fire test. All appear nominal there. And of course the wind is blowing that plume right back over the rocket now, unfortunately. Rocket's pulling a magic trick, disappearing in a cloud of smoke.
Pulling a Vandenberg.
Yeah, really. But that does appear to be a standard pre-launch static fire test completed. With Falcon Heavy now getting ready for the USSF-67 mission. With that test, assuming obviously SpaceX is going to do a quick look data review, make sure that everything was nominal. And then they'll roll this rocket back for payload integration, and the launch was no earlier than...
В общем-то, проведет успешный прожиг ракеты Falcon Heavy всех 27 двигателей. Ну, скорее всего, успешен. Но если не взорваться, то, скорее всего, успешен. Хотя там, конечно, могут быть проблемы с двигателями, которые их не видно, но вряд ли они есть. Скорее всего, все успешно. Ну, в общем-то, да. Очень много дыма от прожига. Ясно, у меня умер интернет на телефоне, поэтому придется... Да. Поэтому сейчас, извините. Придется на некоторое время сделать вот так. Так. Сейчас, подождите. Ну, вообще-то, да, сейчас будет проводиться D-Tank. Сейчас все топливо с ракеты сольют, после чего ее приведут обратно в горизонтальное положение и ведут в ангар цеха вертикально, ну, в ангар площадки LC-39A. После чего поставят обтекатель с порезанной нагрузкой со спутником и... И да. Ну и потом снова вывезут за пару часов уже до пуска. И пуск, собственно, будет не ранее. Собственно, 13 января 22:51. Ну, в общем-то, да. Кстати, мощность, подождите. Где? Что за фигня? Сейчас, подождите. Ага. Кстати, мощность всех этих 27 двигателей на 1D составляет примерно 22 800 килоньютонов. У СЛС мощность аж 39 тысяч килоньютонов примерно. Ну да, 22 819 килоньютон в атмосфере, 22 618 килоньютон в вакууме. Все, трансляция, как понимаю, закончена уже. Ну, а там 24/7 идет, поэтому вы можете видеть дальше то, что там происходит. Так. Ну, в общем-то, да, первый ступень это обычная модифицированная ступень Falcon 9 высотой 42 метра, диаметром примерно 3,6 метра, собственно, который установлен на 9 двигателей примерно 1D. Боковые, ну, она модифицированная, она усилена, чтобы выдерживать тягу еще и боковых ускорителей. Боковые ускорители это у нас такие же первые ступени Falcon 9, только вместо отделителя носовой конус установлен. Также с 9 двигателями Marine 1D на каждом ускорителе, собственно, в итоге получается 27 двигателей Marine 1D, тягивает 23 меганьютона, почти. Ускоритель также высотой 40... Не, ускоритель, ну там, да, ну примерно высотой также 43 метра, потому что оно, скорее всего, не такой же высотой, как и отделитель. Ну да, ну там вроде чуть ниже, чем отделитель, ну в общем-то да, и диаметром также 3,6 метров. Вторая спина с высотой примерно 15 метров, диаметром также 3,6 метров, на ней установлен один двигатель Marine 1D, оптимизирует для работы в вакууме, вся в 934 килоньютона в вакууме. И потом идет обтекатель, высотой которого сейчас еще не установлен, обтекатель высотой примерно 12 метров и диаметром 5,2 метра. Ну в общем-то да. Один пуск этой ракеты в многоразовом варианте стоит где-то 97 миллионов долларов. Полностью многоразовом в одноразовом полностью варианте около 160-170, может уже даже миллионов долларов. Ну, в общем-то, да. Ну и в принципе все. Больше уже я вам расскажу про эту ракету уже во время самого запуска. Ну а пока всем спасибо за просмотр и всем пока.